Welcome, everyone. Officially, welcome. Tasting order is in the chat for you guys. I'm really looking forward to this virtual tasting we got here tonight. I think Kinglake's one of the most exciting distilleries we have here in Victoria, and I'm pretty sure I'm well overdue for a visit. It's been quite a few years now. Even though it's like an hour away, I really need to get my butt up there to visit you guys. But tonight we put together a very special tasting of some of the core range products that they have, and some very fun stuff, including a whiskey that is unreleased, possibly still in cask, I think. Yep. And we are, of course, joined by the wonderful owners, Chantal and Sam, who will talk us through how they fell into the whiskey industry and making this delicious liquid we're trying tonight. But before I hand it over to them, quick housekeeping to go through. We obviously share our full virtual tasting housekeeping video in the Zoom link email. It goes over the usual, use five glasses, five whiskies this time. Five glasses if you have them, if not, I only ever have one. But the most important, obviously, is don't drink and drive, please. We encourage responsible drinking. If you ever need a refresher on the housekeeping, that's up on our YouTube channel, along with recordings of all of our virtual tastings, including this one when we get it up, and I'll share the link out afterwards. I always love to see your tasting notes and questions in the chat, particularly the tasting notes. So please pop them in there and I'll read them out periodically through the Zoom. And I'm going to go quickly over the tasting order verbally, so people at home watching back have a heads up. The order is as follows. Number 1 is the O'Grady's ex-bourbon cask. 2 is the double wood cask. 3 is the full noise cask strength. And 4 is the ex-rye cask. And number 5 is the port bomb unreleased cask. So I'm super excited to crack into these. I won't wait any longer. Let's tuck in to this O'Grady's release, which is a revisit for me now. And I'll hand it over to Chantal and Sam to tell us about how Kinglake got started.
Cool. Hi guys, hope everyone enjoys.
Hi.
I'll pour our O'Grady's and Sam can talk you through how I guess we came up with Kinglake Distillery.
Yeah, so I suppose really for us it's all about Kinglake. It's all about kind of the location where the distillery is. So although we were only about an hour outside Melbourne, it's kind of a world away. We're right up in the kind of bush, tucked away down a dirt track, surrounded by kind of tall, towering messmates and peppermint gums. Totally off grid. Sometimes if I'm distilling late at night, I've literally got kangaroos kind of hopping past the door to the distillery. So we've got this lovely location. It was really a case of essentially, it's a perfect place to make whiskey. And there's loads of different sort of elements to Kinglake that we think we could use to make a single malt, which is really, really distinctive and really, really different. The biggest one was the water. So we're kind of right at the top of a hill in Kinglake, and one of the kind of local streams or brooks like rises from the ground right on the edge of the property. It's called Chiser Creek. And we've got a huge kind of lake, spring-fed lake on the property. And originally we were going to use that. It was for something else, wasn't it? For kind of farming. But once we decided, we started to think about making whiskey. The water source was a huge kind of positive. We kind of had it tested against. I managed to kind of track down the ideal kind of whiskey making profile from Scotch, and then tested the water here, and the iron and calcium in particular. The content was very similar to what they use in Scotland. Don't have to worry too much about the kind of potability of the water, although it's pretty clear anyway. But we're going to sort of boil it twice during the distilling process. So the water comes straight from the creek straight into the mash tank, literally no filtration, no nothing, like a little gauze filter, and that's about it. So yeah, that was really, it was about trying to get as much of the local. We had this great location in Kinglake, and it's about using that to make a single malt, which is really, really different from everything else that was available.
Yeah, I guess the other part from the water was our open fermentations. So we still use the distiller's yeast. and then we leave it open for another 4 more days for any live pollen and yeast. So I guess another way of trying to get as much of the flavour of Kinglake into the whiskey as well.
Yeah, so we use, without sort of geeking out too much, we use a traditional M1 yeast, which is the sort of the main yeast they would use in Scotland for making whiskey. That usually eats all the sugar, does all its work in the first sort of 72 hours. So usually that's where a ferment would stop. And as Chantal said, we'll leave ours a week with the top off. All our ferments are open, so we can encourage as much of the kind of local yeast and pollens as possible. And you can see it when in the hot weather, there's almost like a layer of dust over the lake, and that's just from the pollen from all the gum trees in the kind of surrounding area.
Doesn't look very pretty, so it's a bit difficult for us to catch it on Instagram because it looks a bit scummy, but it definitely makes you realise that there are lots of pollens around that's going to get into the ferments.
So we have this great location. There's all these different variables we could use to make a good single malt. So we've got the water, we've got the ability to make open ferments. The climate, obviously aging, where you age your barrels has a big effect on the end product. And as a lot of people probably know, Australia, given the conditions are quite hot over here, it has an effect on how the barrels work. It makes the barrels kind of age the whiskey a bit faster. Up here, you still got that real hot weather, but also the winters are cold, and you get lots and lots of humidity. So it's slightly different from the sort of barrel aging conditions from a lot of other places in Australia. A little bit like Tassie in some respects, I suppose, but also just a little bit hotter probably in the summer.
Yeah.
So what we decided basically we could use all these variables to try and make a really, really interesting single malt.
Yeah.
And the way we wanted to do that, I suppose, primarily was make a spirit, which is really interesting. So they talk about a much kind of quoted statistic is that 60% of the taste of a whiskey, 60% of the taste of a whiskey comes from the barrel. And we sort of felt that in the early days, a lot of the really, really amazing Tassie whiskey, it was probably more like 70%. It was all about these really high quality fortified barrels. So we wanted to do something a bit different. And we're aiming all along, we said we were going to aim for a 50-50 balance between the underlying spirit and the barrel. So let's make that spirit as interesting as we possibly can, and then basically balance that out with a barrel that's not going to kind of overpower the underlying spirit. Which, getting onto the whiskey we're kind of drinking, is why we were big fans of ex-bourbon barrels, just because there's no point in, and we can talk about a bit more about that in a bit. There's no point in making this really, really interesting spirit and then smashing it out of the park with a really incredible port barrel where the spirit itself is just going to get lost.
Or wet fill.
Yeah, so an ex-bourbon barrel just allowed us to kind of try to balance the two elements as best we could.
So yeah, we don't alter the recipe, so that's why Sam's talking about that. So it'll be interesting to see if you can sort of pick up our underlying sort of base spirit through it all. As we go through. Yeah,
so when we were talking about what are we going to do to build a whiskey brand, one of the things we said was you need to be able to ideally pick out a Kinglake from a blind lineup, regardless of what barrel finish it's got on it. So, I'm a massive Springbank fan, and we were trying to make a spirit which has got a certain, almost like a Kinglake funk to it, which is kind of there regardless of which expression you're drinking.
Yeah, I think that's like such a great idea to have that like core flavor profile that shines through. I think it's so important for a distillery, and yeah, you guys hit the nail on the head. Sorry, continue.
Well, no, so we're saying getting onto this one, I suppose. So this
O'Grady's.
Yeah, this is the first whiskey we released. It's probably the one we still sell by far the most of, and one of our favourite. Tasting notes, we tend to sort of don't go too deep into that because it's quite interesting to see what other people say, and we're really of the opinion it's so subjective that rather than put words into people's mouths, we're kind of more interested to hear what other people have got to say. But what we can say is that the intention is the underlying spirit has got a real super rich, oily, viscous kind of tobacco-y leatheriness to it. And we're just overlaying that with a really nice vanilla toffee caramel of that ex-bourbon barrel. And the intention is to just blend those two things together so that no one element kind of overpowers the other.
And I guess with the recipe, there's a we put 4 different malts in there.
Oh yeah, so yeah,
so you can understand. So the 4 different malts, we put an Atlas in there, which is a bit of a distiller's malt. We put a schooner malt in there. We put a bit of a chocolate roasted in there, and then and all of them are done from Voyager Malt. I'm not sure if anyone's aware of Voyager Malt. Great company up in New South Wales, or single origin grown. Stu's a legend who runs it. But the other malt that we get is the peated malt from the Scottish borders. So it's a heavy peated malt. It's only 25%, but it's just interesting how sometimes it really comes out and other times it doesn't. So that is our base recipe, apart from obviously the water and open ferments and how we do our cuts.
Yeah, the intention is the smoke is just kind of there in the background, giving it a little bit of extra depth, but not being kind of the star of the show. And the chocolate just gives it a little bit of extra richness, extra bit of mouthfeel. And some people say they can taste milk chocolate in the whiskey, whether that's from the malt or from the kind of from the ex-bourbon wood.
Or the Tim Tam that they've just eaten as they're having a drink. But I think the chocolate roasted and the peat really works well together. I think that's an amazing blend. They
also, without talking about everything in the first tasting, the other thing that we do, which is a huge element of our whiskey, is during the distillation, we cut really, really deep into the tails, into the faints. And what that does is it allows us to get all that smoke from that peated malt, but also all the interesting characteristics from the water, all the slight sort of the earthiness, the richness from that 7-day ferment, any unfermentable sugars during this sort of hand stirred mash, all those kind of interesting slight anomalies, I suppose, that we've created to make an interesting spirit. By cutting really deep into faints, we're getting all of that character through, and also some really, really heavy mouthfeel and lots of kind of viscosity as well.
Yeah, the tasting notes coming through on this whiskey is spectacular. I will say they instantly, even going in for that first sip, it reminded me of Deanston single malt, that really like malty, waxy, a little bit of the kind of fruits that you would put on muesli, forward tones, but then that kind of salinity that means you're not getting that super sweet tone from that you can sometimes get in those ex-bourbon type casks. Absolutely beautiful. Leo says vanilla and violet crumble on the nose, toasted coconut on the palate. Michael K, nice burst of spice and pear. Michael S, you guys need to stop turning up to the same tastings. It's a differentiation. The K and the S. But yeah, Michael S, beautiful clean spirit, floral notes on the palate, medium to long finish. Ian's getting hints of banana fruit salad and some cinnamon-like spice. Lynn caught a hint of the peat, which is fantastic. I don't notice it too much. I think that plays off as that kind of salty, like biscuity kind of tone for my palate. But yeah, super cool. And yeah, Leo said the peat's so subtle it seems more like oaky spice, but it's beautiful. Yeah, absolutely gorgeous. We might move on to whiskey number 2, the double wood, which kind of ties into a question Ollie has, which is, do you have a preferred ex-bourbon distillery that you get your casks from, or is it a mix of whichever American distilleries are on offer, I suppose, at the time?
Yeah, we've used a lot of Buffalo Trace, which we're quite happy with. We
Maker's Mark.
We've had some. Usually we get a lot of ours sort of via Kelvin Cooperage, so some of it will depend on just what they have available. Some of them we actually sourced direct from a tiny little bourbon distillery in America called Journeyman.
And you'll taste one of their rye, ex-rye ones coming up. So.
Yeah, it's true. Which is really nice because they're shipped over. Obviously, they can't get to us faster, basically. So they're still a lot wetter. Which
and their whole.
Yeah, and their whole. Obviously, they were 100 litre, these journeyman barrels, which is great because it means we can access a smaller size cask without having to take a full size bourbon and reduce it down. And although that's okay, there's always a little bit of something that's kind of gets lost, I feel. Whereas if it's coming straight from the distillery in the right size, it's better. And I think, I personally, I mean, Chantal might disagree, but I think it's almost more for me, the more the quality of the barrel, the speed that it's got to us, as opposed to which distillery it comes from. Personally, I mean, these journeyman barrels that we've used, someone was saying to us that they didn't like the journeyman bourbon, but I was like, I sort of said straight along that I can tell these are going to make a great whiskey.
They did smell great,
and it is, and they've been fantastic. So
slowed, even though they've been 100-litre casks, they've been longer to mature, but.
Yeah,
actually, I was a bit like, oh, I'm not sure about journeyman, and then I think Sam won the battle on that one. Things turned out to be really good. So, but cool. So the double wood.
Yeah.
So what this one is a marriage of ex-bourbon, so the O'Grady's, with one of our big old 200-litre Portuguese tawny barrels. So we put the two together. It'll be interesting to see what everyone thinks about with the peat. So again, like we said, the recipe stays the same. But it's just how our recipe can go with different types of wood. So
so also the bourbon barrels that we use in this one, these were actually the journeyman bourbon barrels. So whereas the O'Grady's up until now, there's been predominantly small 50-litre casks, just because we sort of, it's the first whiskey that was ready. This is us starting to move into larger format bourbons. So the sort of vanilla toffee sweetness of the bourbon is just dialed back a little bit. And then the port barrel that we used was it's the oldest whiskey we had in the shed. It was one of the first barrels we filled. So I think it's sort of six and a bit years old now. But it was a full size barrel, and 6 years for full size is still fairly young. So even though we're adding some of that kind of rich port and some sort of French oak spice in there as well, again, it's not hopefully smashing everything out of the park. And I think this one for me is a little bit more spirit forward than the first one, as well as having a little bit more going on.
Yeah, I think that like that French oak just lends a dry spice note no matter what whiskey it is, and it really like makes it aggressive is a terrible word for it, but it's a much more of a kind of abrasive mouthfeel. Like you really feel the whiskey in every corner of your mouth, I think. But yeah, it's super cool. You mentioned earlier as well, so like you obviously use a variety of cask sizes for your whiskies.
So I guess when we set up, so we don't make anything else, just specialised in single malt whiskey. A big thing for us is obviously we had enough cash flow for 3 years. So it was a big decision, something we probably spent hours and hours over just discussing, because a lot in Tassie we're doing 20-litre casks, but when Sam's a bit of a guru on Excel and has like a million tabs, it just didn't seem to make business sense to be doing 20s, and then we're like 50s. No one was doing 50s back then. And then we're just a bit worried about hundreds would take too long. And luckily we didn't go the hundreds because we've had sort of short summers. So we said, let's bite the bullet and go the 50s. It costs us 10 times as much because obviously we ship 200 across. We've got to pay for a cooper to reduce it. And then you've only got quarter, and then you lose more angel share.
And you only get 1 for 1 as well.
And then when they're cutting the barrel, the 200-litre ex-bourbon barrel down, you're only getting 150-litre. But it's been our sort of weapon. Do you know what I mean? Managed to get a really good whiskey out at a good time. I mean, some people, there's different opinions on smaller casks, but we love 50s. I'm still filling 50-litre casks now, even though I've got enough stock that I could be kind of weaning us away from them. It's just a really
I think the spirit is strong enough that we can pump quite a lot of ex-bourbon kind of sweetness into it, and it still kind of stands up. So, although as we've gone on, our kind of O'Grady's has maybe just moved slightly away from being quite so sweet. We still love,
I think it helps cutting it down to a 50 if it's American oak. I think once you start, from our experience, I think if it's French oak and you start cutting anything below 100, it's just way more trickier. It's quite more tannic, French oak. So for us, we don't cut French oak down any lower than 100. And then, but American oak, we feel way more comfortable that you're not sort of going to overdo it.
Yeah, I imagine French oak is a bit more temperamental, kind of, when you have to watch it a lot more carefully at the smaller sizes.
But so and I suppose in terms of what they shared, we've probably got I don't know, 30% 50-litre barrels, maybe 40% hundreds, and then the rest full size. Obviously, to try and, as much as we try and build up stock as much as we can, there's an element of production, matching production to sales kind of thing. So it just depends on how I balance that out, what we're feeling at the time.
So the double wood was quite precious, the one you're drinking, that's 46%. Because like Sam said, that was one of our first really big babies that we filled. So I didn't want to use it. I was like, no, let's keep it. But it works so well as a double wood. So
yeah, amazing. Cool. And are you using a lot of these casks for refills? Are you refilling some of the casks that have already been released now?
Yeah, some and some, I suppose. The smaller ex-bourbons, I'm using those a couple of times, just because they've got so much left to give in them. It might take sort of 3 or 4 years rather than 2 or 3, but I think that they're still making some great whiskey, particularly when I'm using that. It gives me a little bit more in our armory to try and create a kind of consistent O'Grady's. When I've got some second fills, I can kind of taste match a bit better. So yeah, and I suppose, this sort of fashion, I suppose, we talk to kind of whiskey aficionados who are really into their kind of second fills. And it's kind of swayed me a little bit. I'm like, I'm enjoying these second fills. I suppose that is influencing me feeling more myself, I suppose, as well.
I think because it then brings out our spirit more as well. We're finding, because people can buy 20-litre cask direct, in their own little cask. But we find if it's second fill, the whiskey tastes so much, it just works better, we think.
Just gives us a bit more of a window. I think you've got to be, the first fills are just, got to hit it just right, haven't you?
Sure.
I think that's a kind of a perpetual journey everyone goes on. Everyone has those big rich sherry tones. I really like that. And then you kind of like, a bit of bourbon in there, that goes down nicer. And then you eventually phase into ex-bourbon cask whiskies, and then you're like, you know what, refills are where it's at. Like, the closer I can get to the core spirit, the better. Super, super cool. I love the tasting notes. You guys are absolutely bang on in the comments of this. Ian said a curly whirly, and I think that is absolutely like a great call. That caramelly butterscotchy kind of thing with the chocolate, and then your mouth hurts, not from the spice, but from having to chew it for so long. But marine and saline on the nose, bit salted caramel chocolate. Michael K is getting rich toffee and dried fruit and a creamy texture. Leo's getting oily, waxy, creamy, and oak spice again. Ian also says a dash of water really opens it up and allows the spice notes to come through better, which is really, really cool. Michael is also wondering what kind of time frame and percentage of the 2 barrel types was it? Was it like how many years in the one and then the other?
Yeah, so no, it was so the Portuguese Tawny was about filled. Well, I know when it's filled. It was Christmas 2018, and we try and have as much info as we can on the bottle. But being as the ex-bourbon barrel was younger, the dates on the double wood will relate to the bourbon barrel. So yeah, 40% was that one, and then 60% was the ex-bourbon. And I think depending which batch you've got, the ex-bourbon element was probably about 3 years, 3.5 years. Yeah, and as I said, the port would have been about 6. And it's actually a Portuguese tawny port. So, you know, it was quite an interesting port actually. It wasn't just your normal kind of sort of ruby rich kind of port. It was a little bit
yeah, it's exciting when we got
yeah.
those barrels.
Cool. There's the variation between ports is a whole other thing. I'm barely getting my head around all the different sherry types. It's like, slow down, it's too much information.
No.
Yeah. So we might move on to whiskey number 3 now. And I have a question that's kind of relevant, obviously, because this is cask strength. You said that it's quite humid up there. I totally believe it. If you've ever been up to the Victorian High Country, it is like Melbourne is wet, but I'm pretty sure it's a lot wetter up there than what we get down here. Because of that humidity, do you find that your ABV tends to drop a little bit rather than like scaling up
Yeah.
like most hot climates do?
Yeah, it's true. And it's funny enough, I thought that was standard, but someone was saying that's really rare. So I put it in at 63.5, sort of standard into everything, and it usually comes out about 61. That's interesting. I didn't know that. So that's actually a fact that's to do with the humidity, is it, Emma? That sort of character.
Yeah, my understanding from the conversations I've had with coopers and distillers and people who work in like hot climates and stuff, the idea is you've obviously got the water in the cask with the alcohol, but then if you've got water outside, it creates this balance between the amount of water inside the cask and the amount of water outside the cask because of humidity. So it doesn't want to move because, well, all that space has already been taken up by humidity. So you don't get that evaporation of water, but the alcohol is not bothered because there's no alcohol out there. So the alcohol is still able to escape during that kind of angel share evaporation, whereas the water is like, I'm happy to stay put because why would I leave this crowded room to go into that crowded room? There's a very, very rough overview explanation of how like water transferal between humidity and all that kind of stuff works, but that's how it was always kind of explained to me is, you know, there's no need for it to evaporate because the water on the outside is like, absolutely not, you cannot come out here.
So
I like it. I'm going to use it.
Yeah.
All yours.
Very, very good explanation.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go.
So yeah, so the full noise. So this is our cask strength of the green one. So our ex-bourbon. So really, for me, I love this one. 60%. All our whiskey at cask strength comes out at 61, 60%. Again, like Sam mentioned, we put it in the same as Scotland do, 63.5. But yeah, I love this one. It's the full flavour. I mean, obviously, it's got the punch of the higher ABV, but this is exactly obviously what we've tried to create. A bit of water also works, opens it up a bit, but yeah, it's the full barrel and our unique spirit together.
Yeah, I suppose that's the real kind of the nitty gritty of what's in the bond store, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of what's in the bond store.
Yeah, and when we first started up, I don't know if a lot of people know about flocking. It's a very slow process. Obviously, we don't chill filter. So we do it very old school where basically we'll empty a bourbon or empty a barrel that's at 60%. And when we add the water to reduce the ABV to just say 46, you've got to let it sit for a long time because the particles are too small. So you've got to wait for the particles to bond together so they're heavy enough to then drop to the bottom of the vessel.
Yeah, it creates when you add that water, it creates some of the sort of fatty chain. I don't know what I'm not
like Cooper's is a good example. Cooper's beer, but yeah,
it's different.
It has that, yeah, it's a different thing, but has that, and it's a very slow process to happen. So when we first did it, obviously we didn't know what we were doing. Well, we're learning. And the flock kept sitting to the top, and we kept leaving it months are going past. God, this is taking forever. And then someone says, oh, yeah, when you shine the torch, it looks like it's on the top, but it's actually already settled. So we got about our first whiskey out months beforehand. But yeah, so it's a real slow process. So at that stage, we're like, let's just do cask strength, bottle some Kinglake water and teach people how to drink cask strength. But a lot of our advice with the distilleries been calling bars and bottle shops and about, okay, what's the best way of selling? And they said cask strength will be too much for the general public. So 46 is a good sort of match, and that sort of works with our whiskey as well. So yeah, a bit of a long story, but we wish we could keep all of it cask strength. But
I suppose we'll going into that. So when you add this the water to reduce the ABV down, it creates this kind of flock, which is essentially these kind of fatty elements stringing together. And what you're doing is basically, Chantal says, letting that settle out to the bottom and taking it away. And what you take away is probably literally in 100 litres, it might be like 100 ml. It's nothing, but you're still taking, that's still probably flavour you're taking out. And whether you're letting it settle naturally or whether you're chill filtering it, you're still taking something out. So I think, you know, when you're drinking something cask strength, that is the absolute 100% maximum amount of flavour with nothing taken away.
Yeah. And the reason, I'm not sure if people know the difference between chill filtered. So that process of all the particles dropping to the bottom happens when it's a lot faster. So
it's colder.
When it's colder, sorry. So yeah, when it's colder, that happens. So it's always good to try and do your flocking wintertime, not summertime, or be patient.
And sometimes if you get, you'll see a whiskey which is slightly hazy, that's one that hasn't been flocked or particularly well.
But we keep the flock because I like making Christmas pudding, so I put it in that. So no waste.
It's a lot of flock for one day of the year.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking, because so a lot of the guys here are probably familiar with flock. I know that we've done bottlings with Overeem in the past where we've bottled the flocky liquid type stuff, and we kind of think of it as the whiskey butter. Because it's the fat, fatty acid compounds that have all coagulated together. I almost thought, I'm like, you know what? It would make a great replacement for vodka in like an espresso martini, because you just got that buttery whiskey waxiness. I'm a sucker for an espresso martini. And anything to make it more whiskey related.
Yeah.
But no, super cool. Yeah, Jamie's asking if you sell the pudding at the distillery for Christmas time.
No, because we always have Christmas in Australia and the UK, so I'm always like, four puddings is enough. Sorry.
Fair enough. Rob making awful dad jokes. Christmas is about getting the flock together. I will kick you out if there are any more, but yeah. Love the tasting. It's this one, grassy green apples on the nose, luxurious and velvet. Yeah, Michael S. Rich, full of flavor, waxy, oily, just beautiful. Michael K. Thick, oily mouthfeel with a nice heat. But yeah, it is that hard thing of like fast strength whiskey isn't necessarily the most appealing to a broader range of whiskey consumers, but I find that like people who are really dedicated and love Australian whiskey tend to go for that cask strength. We like appreciate all those extra like luscious compounds in it. So but on the other hand though, I do think that having a core range product that people can get again and again, like the O'Grady's, kind of like is valuable in its own way. Do you find that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, as well as all the sort of independent bottle shops and bars and things, we're stocked in lots of different providors and things, and it's just it's an easier whiskey for someone who's not necessarily a whiskey fan to pick up and get stuck into. And
also a nicer price point, I guess, as well, than having to do the cask strength. Not that our cask strength's just our price is equivalent to the ABV, but yeah, the shops definitely. So I was going to say also with our cask strength, so it's the black label. I'm not sure if people can see. So on our labels, we always write when it's distilled, when it's bottled. We don't really do that no age statement. But with the cask strength, we always put how many barrels it's made of. So when we're bottling, it'll just depend on what barrels.
Yeah, so that's another good point, Chantal. So when I'm putting together a batch of O'Grady's, I'll usually I might use anywhere between sort of 5 and 12 barrels. And as I'm putting together my selection of barrels for that, any that particularly stand out, those are the ones that we'll set aside and use for the full noise.
Oh, I've lost it.
I think you might have lost
Sorry.
him for a second.
Oh,
No?
good. I'm back. We're
Oh,
good.
you're back again. We lost you.
I love the idea that like your internet up in the regional rural areas is better than mine in the center of Melbourne. Classic. Amazing. Well, so let's kind of like trimming our way onto whiskey number 4, which is the X Rye. And you were talking about this is one of the journeyman casks, you were saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
They're an organic distillery, aren't they? Is that kind of something that tell us a bit about
Yeah,
the
you're
kind
right.
of sustainability and the organic vibes?
I mean, we sort of sort of push another friend of ours. There's a lovely distillery called Swiftcrest in Mansfield, and they basically set out from the get-go to be organic in everything they did, and they kind of built a relationship with journeyman because they wanted even the barrel that they used to the ex-bourbon barrel they used to come from an organic distillery. So they actually made the initial contact, and it was when I went to see his barrels, I'm like, these are amazing barrels. And then, you know, we went from there. So, yeah, we're aware that they're organic. We're not, you know, that's not our kind of our thing.
No.
But yeah, but you know, the Swiftcrest, yeah, if anybody's ever in Mansfield or gets a chance, he hasn't actually got any whiskey out yet, but
They do gin and vodka.
yeah, all
Amazing.
organic, incredible.
Yeah. Really
Yeah, I think
sustainable.
from memory, they're like even more off-grid than you guys, like fire-powered still. They can only run it during daylight hours because there's no lights or electricity or anything there. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, amazing. Like amazing.
They built a steam boiler from scratch, and the only person they could get to sign it off was someone that worked on like a puffing billy train, because he was the only one that had experience with this kind of because they fire they create the steam by a firebox just using deadfall wood from around the property kind of thing. So it's really really interesting. It's very small, but
oh yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, I mean the still's 200 liters, so you know it's much smaller. Ours is 2,500 liters.
I'd love to use wood to heat the steam, but yeah, it just wouldn't happen.
And Sam's a bit jealous because he's got like a little train whistle on his steam boiler. So every now and then when you've got a boiler, you got to let the steam out and it goes choo. We haven't, he's got little, whistle envy at the moment.
So yeah, anyway, so journeyman, yeah, but the amazing rye barrels. And this one's interesting because it's really super light touch on the barrel. This is probably the most sort of spirit forward whiskey we've ever done, and a lot of people who tried it said they couldn't believe that it was actually the same spirit as all the other sort of core range, because it's just so light and delicate and sort of floral.
And it's 46%.
Yeah.
One,
so yeah, really, I mean, I haven't done a lot of sort of tasting notes on this other than to say, yeah, what we thought is very sort of, very delicate, very light, and quite surprising, I suppose, that it's, yeah.
How it is with our sort of
but I love it. Amazing, you know.
This is the one I drink all the time.
Yeah.
It's a great one.
Have you got like other interesting casks of that type, like X-Rye and other stuff kicking about for future releases?
Yeah, we've got some. I mean, someone a little independent bottler did a little bit of it last year, but vermouth barrels. A lot of people were like, "Oh, that's not going to work."
We'll do that.
But amazing. One of the best whiskies that I think we've ever done.
Yeah.
Really good.
We do red gum. I guess anything that for us, if we're using anything that's not oak, would still mature it as a full whiskey first. So we feel like all whiskey should be aged in oak for a minimum of 2 years at least. Then we'd only finish in a red gum or a mulberry or a cherry tree. they would only be a finishing cask. So for us, that's a big thing for us if we use any different types of wood.
Yes, and also we didn't want to sort of become known as a correct wacky wood kind of specialist. So we feel that we've got a really good hand on a red gum finish, don't we? And then said there's been a couple of, like Justin from Whiskey in Isolation did a great mulberry finish. And as I said, other than that, they tend to be oak barrels, but yeah, we've got some vermouth, some ex rums, some ex Pinot de Charentaz. I don't know if I pronounced that right. What else?
I think it's Pinot de Charente. Is that the one?
Oh,
yeah.
that sounds better.
Pinot de Charente.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
If you just
Thanks.
say it with a touch of arrogance attitude, it's fine. French.
Yeah, so
No.
they're going to be really interesting. Someone was saying that's a French fortified. It's more of an aperitif than a digestive. Is that right?
Yeah, it's kind of similar to I believe they call them Mistel. They call them Mistel here. I think they might call them that similarly in France. It's kind of like you've got cognac based spirit, but then you add some of the grape juice back into it. It's kind of like making a fortified wine, but you don't add the fresh wine to fortifieds. Uh, but in this case, you do add the fresh juice to the Mistel. Yeah, so it's specific, and I think it's lightly barrel aged. I'm not 100% certain at all, but yeah.
It's interesting. So they're actually adding the sort of go on a tangent. So they're starting with the spirit and adding the wine, as opposed to starting with the wine and adding the spirit. It's quite interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's you barrel age it for a bit and then you add the juice back in, and it kind of kicks off a mini ferment because you're not using the spirit to kill off the fermentation. You're adding the juice into the spirit to bring it back down to a level that it might still ferment. Wine is a whole area that would take a lifetime I don't have to learn about one. But yeah, I think that reversing that process means that you're not getting the same kind of sugar content as well, because you're not like making the wine first, and it's not for fermented wine, it's just the grape juice, like verjuice type stuff. Yeah.
Well, yeah, so we feel some types and they smell incredible. So thank you. Now when it is ready, I know a bit more about why it tastes so good.
Yeah,
but that's
super interesting.
So yeah, I suppose 80% of what we got is ex-bourbon in the shed, because that's the bond floor, I should say. That's basically what excites us. But yeah, like any distiller, probably barrels is the really exciting bit. So if we weren't careful, you'd have 500 barrels and none of them would be the same. So we have to kind of stop ourselves and just every now and again buy a couple of something interesting. We just sort of concentrate on getting some really sort of decent, high quality bourbons filled.
I guess we always aim to try and have sort of 3 core ranges, which is great for sort of business and people direct, but 3 core, and then play around with a
couple of limited releases a year maybe. But
I think it's a smart way to do it. Like you don't want to overdo it too much with like I love the idea of like constantly interesting, intriguing releases, but kind of after a while you're like, I just want to go. What's that milk ad? I just want milk that tastes like real milk. I just want my whiskey that I can trust and go to again and again. So I think it's great that you can have that.
Yeah,
that's what when we originally went to when we were starting out, Chantal went and asked all the different shops and in particular independent bottle shops, what kind of product do we need to make that you can sell? And this was, bear in mind, this was probably sort of 8-10 years ago. And they were all, there's some fantastic Australian whiskey out there, but it's all single cask stuff. And we'll get one and it's great and we'll sell that, and then we'll get another one and we don't know what it tastes completely different. So right from the get-go, we knew that we wanted to be have some really, really consistent products rather than just releasing single cask after single cask. And although in the early days, the O'Grady's had quite a lot of variability because I only had the barrels that were ready. As time has gone on, I've got more barrels to choose from. That kind of variability is slowly getting squeezed down, and hopefully it's getting more and more consistent.
Yeah,
Well,
fantastic.
as
As
consistent
consistent as you can get it, yeah.
we still like, you know, we're still stirring the mash tun with the wooden pedal, so yeah.
No, I love that. Tasting notes coming through on this. I will say, when I first stuck my nose into it, it smelled distinctly of fondant, like cake fondant, that like soft, sweet, almost marzipan-y kind of vibe to it. Really, really cool. Jamie got a lot of apple spice and apple pie, which yeah, I definitely got once I took a sip. Ian got white chocolate and raspberry. Michael K spiced honey orange zest and toasty wood. I feel like oak oaky spice is probably the core profile for a lot of your whiskeys through it. There's less so. I agree. There's less so on this one. It is quite a light style, but super cool. Leo's getting usual rye soapiness on the nose. You must be the only person I've ever met, Leo, who treats rye like coriander. But that's okay, more for the rest of us. So, but the light touch of wood means don't get the same notes on the palate. Um, yeah, so Michael S. Dry finish after the green apples, apple crumble, grassy notes. Fang said warming up the glass with their hands gave it a lovely little surprise, some milky chocolate on the palate. Rob just says, I like it, which is great. That's what we love to hear. It's the hard hitting commentary breakdown that we love to see for a whiskey. So um, absolutely love it. Now, I think I was very excited when I saw this one. I'm sure everyone else in the tasting tonight was really excited when they saw it. We might grab the final whiskey of the night, the Port Bomb unreleased cask. So this is still in barrel as we speak, yeah?
No, sorry, I have taken this out of the barrel actually. Sorry, Chantal.
Oh yeah.
Actually, this is kind of my baby a little bit because yeah, I was kind of making it with someone who's a sort of friend of the distillery.
Yeah.
So
it's right into the port. So.
Yeah, so the sort of theory with this one was, you know, having said that all our whiskey, we're trying to balance spirit and barrel, sort of a 50-50 balanced whiskey. This one was a case of, okay, how much port can we smash it with? How much of a port bomb can we make and still have our spirit shine through? So this was a tiny little barrel a friend of ours had that had port in it for literally 40 years. And he tipped the port out and he put the whiskey in. So it was 2-year-old ex-bourbon whiskey that was finished for about, I don't know if it says on it, it was about 6 months in a super wet, really, really old port barrel. Yeah, and basically he's tried it, I've tried it, Chantal's tried it,
and that's the only other people apart from everyone doing this tonight.
But this is sort of whiskey that we've never made before, and maybe we'll never make.
Well, maybe we will.
Maybe we will, yeah.
I guess we've never really done wet casks before, really, have we? So that's why this for us was an experiment. I think I've only tried it once. I've only tried it.
So yeah, it's about as much of a port bomb as is possible to be, probably. But
yeah, wow. I caught out of the corner of my eye Lawrence taking that first sniff, and just like the face he made was just wild. I was like, yeah, that's how I felt sticking my nose in, just like absolutely incredible. Rob already wants 2 barrels of it. But yeah, it's so interesting because is this Australian port?
yes, I think it was, yeah, Australian port, yeah, Tawny.
I think that you can definitely tell it is Australian fortified wine in nature, but you can also tell that it's really old. It smells like the warehouse, the barrel room at like Stanton and Killeen up in Rutherglen, just like earthy and warm and rich, but like grapey and oh man, so incredible. So like, and obviously everybody tasting it now, we are now the first people outside of the three of them to try it, which is very exciting. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. Will it convince you to do more port casks?
I don't. I like it. I really like it. But
I guess I don't feel like it has our underlying
yeah,
spirit as much.
is our spirit still shining through? I don't know. Maybe not enough for us to do it.
If you did a blind lineup, would people?
No, it's our whiskey. If not, then we'd probably not do it, even though we like it. Yeah, that's probably but I still think it's really nice. But
we have bottled them. We have bottled them now. Tasting room. So.
Amazing. So when is this getting released?
Well, because at the moment we tend to only do 1 or 2 limited releases a year. So we just
this one might literally be a tasting room. You might have to come and see us if you want one.
we're just building our tasting room, so that's an incentive to get people. So hopefully in a month or so we'll be open more often. At the moment we just run tours sort of once a month on our website, and we sort of just do a tour around the distillery. But yeah, we've just opened up a tasting room on the property, just at the front. Bit easier access, Emma, than having to go down the big gully and up. It's up on the other dirt road. Yeah, so hopefully that, and then we're going to try and sort of leave limited releases for people, so encourages to come back and back and back.
No, I mean we'll always do the couple of limited releases a year, but this kind of super limited kind of things like this bourbon, those will be the things that we won't really release it. We'll just have it here, and if people are really desperate for it, they can pop up and see us.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's going to cause trouble because we do different colours on our limited releases and all our different types of expressions or barrel finishes, and people collect them. So I'm a bit like, people are going to get a bit grumpy if they've sent us pictures if they've missed out on some of our special releases, saying they didn't get one, it's sold out. So
true.
Yeah.
We can discuss that.
Well, that is gorgeous. I think probably the most movement in the chat and whatnot from everyone, just like absolutely insane. John did ask, it's been watered down from the cask strength. Yep.
Yeah.
46 that one, or 44 actually, that one.
Which is the lowest we've ever reduced it.
Wow. And what size cask was it again?
20. It's a tiny little cask.
Oh wow, little banger cask. But yeah, I've seen incredible. There's not that. That's fair enough. I will say, Michael S. I'll pick you up. Let's do a day trip. You're on the way of my journey up there. But I have a 4-wheel drive car now, so a little bit, it can handle the dirt road a little bit better than my old car. Good. But yeah, absolutely incredible. Riley said it's her favorite. The port flavor shines, so smooth, so drinkable. Lawrence just wrote mate, all caps. That is very much the energy I feel about this whiskey. Michael K, rich plum, dark chocolate, sticky toffee pud. Leo's suggesting it would go really well with a 70% O'Grady's and 30% port bomb mix, like a lovely in between.
Yeah.
Is that something you might think about? Not coming full way round to port, but doing a little dash here and there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah,
we're starting to experiment with sort of the marriaging.
It's true. I mean, the double wood was the first time we'd actually sort of married 2 different types of casks together. We were quite happy with the result, so that might be something we do a bit more of actually. But
we did steal the idea of whiskey and element, came up and did a private bottling. So
well, they were the first ones.
They sort of instigated it.
Yeah, 80-20.
Yeah.
We've I can't remember the name. It escapes me right now. But I heard you guys do octaves. So if you could do a alternative stave, one stave, or every third stave could be a port stave, and the other 2 could be your bourbons, and that could keep a bit of the Kinglake spirit character in there, plus a bit of port influence. If you're playing with casks and you're making your own octaves already, then you have that option.
Yeah. I know, I've heard about that. It'd be interesting to play around with that, for sure. Yeah, it's a good idea actually.
Yeah, food for
We've got
thought.
we got a Cooper. We have a couple of the big Coopers that a lot of the big Australian distilleries use, but some of they're not so keen to make kind of crazy one-off barrels. But we had this kind of secret weapon of I think he's the 5th or 6th generation Cooper. He corrects me when I get it wrong, but yeah, 6 generations of Coopers. He's what, 70 odd now,
Yeah.
and he looks like a Cooper.
Yeah,
And he does all our special projects. But as time's gone on, he's getting less and less keen to do more. So I'm really having to twist his arm now. But that's something that he would be good for, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It would
yeah,
take
he'd
the
love
time to make a really interesting one-off barrel, so, or 2 or 3 or 4.
Yeah. He's a cool
Yeah.
guy.
Just get an order in early so that he's like, you've got everything you need before he decides it's time to retire.
Oh, every time he finds the wood for us, he's like, "Oh, mate, let's find some wood." And then yeah, he's like, "Oh, this might be the last one," and we managed to get him. We go, "Oh, the people really like it," and then yeah, get another barrel. But
Yeah. So what is it? Is it the Jimmy Barnes effect? I swear I'm retiring now. I swear this is my last forever. Yeah, amazing. Jamie's comment absolutely kind of hits the nail on the head with this one for me. The port definitely overpowers the spirit, I think. Like, I do kind of agree. There's that touch of like that oaky spice in the back, but it is still really yum. Like, your spirit behaves, I suppose might be the right word. It behaves really well and it like adapts really well to a cask. So I think that's really, really great to see. It's great when a spirit reacts and responds well to all types of casks rather than just being like, nope, I taste weird in this kind, like just stick me in a bourbon and I'm done, kind of thing. Yeah. Well, amazing. I think I guess Ian was saying an annual release of this with Flock Christmas pudding would be great, please. Yeah,
noted.
fantastic. Oh, I think I've seen a few distilleries do like a Christmas pudding around Christmas time, but I feel like the weather in the UK is a lot more suited to putting on fire.
Yeah. I think it's just finding time because obviously we try and keep as lean as possible. So it's the 2 of us. So I'd love to be baking, but unfortunately, that doesn't sell the whiskey.
Yep, fair enough. And Rob corrected me, it was John Farnham who always says it's his last forever, not Jimmy Barnes. Sorry, I don't know my Jimmys. My Jimmys and my Johns apart. But
And in 4 nights.
I think Ollie has a question. Let me see if I can adjust it or if Ollie can adjust it.
I was just going to ask, you mentioned red gum cast. So a few Australian distillers have tried and tried. I think maybe one has done it pretty well. The others have struggled and said they're never going to do it again. What was your thoughts and feelings around red gum cast? Because it's quite a, not normal sort of wood type, quite leaky or a lot of tannins and that sort of stuff. Well, yeah, keen to hear your stories around why. Was it just an experiment? Is it going to come back again?
Yeah, so we did. The first off, we said we had our sort of special project Cooper make 50-litre barrel, and we I suppose dialing back on that, for us, I think the big thing is using it as a finishing barrel, not aging full term. I think that's the key. And yeah, we the first little 50 we used that as a finishing barrel. We made a whiskey that we were happy with already, and then just finished it in that for sort of 4 or 5 months. And did a special release of about 100 barrels, and that bottles. 100 bottles, sorry, and that went really, really well. And then we did it again, and that went really well. And then, so that made us fairly confident that it was a goer. Then we sent some to Serge at Whiskey Fun. I don't know if you follow his blog, and he gave it an amazing write up, which is kind of the final thing for us to think, yeah, you know what, this is working. And I think it's to do with the fact, as I said, that we're using it as a finishing barrel, and that we've got quite a distinctive spirit, and we watch it quite carefully. So we, for example, will take a sample from it every once a month, and compare that against the basic O'Grady's, which is essentially what we're kind of starting with, and just monitor it. And when we get to the right kind of point where that red gum's just adding something interesting without kind of being too tannic, so then we stop and take it out. And it's.
I think it also it's being to make sure that you've got old red gum. So the Cooper that we have is really selective with what type of red gum he gets. It's obviously got to be very old. So yeah, I think it's the quality of the red gum factor as well.
Like an old fence post kind of red gum, or
yeah. Don't, if anyone's burning them, tell them not to, and we'll send a truck up to pick them up. Yeah, do not burn red gum fence posts.
But there's an interesting video of our Cooper trying to he took a video of himself making the barrels, and he's really having to sort of thrash it and heat just to get that kind of bilge in the barrels. It's quite interesting. He's that's the one thing he's not keen to do too much more of, because he said it's just such hard work trying to actually get them to bend into shape.
It's not an easy, real difficult wood.
And also the fact these little pinholes, and not with George's barrels, but some of the ones we've got from someone else, I've noticed a couple of pinholes that I've had to kind of plug. So yeah, it is a difficult wood to work with, but we're happy with it.
Really, I think it works.
I think it's something quite good, quite special.
Serge is he's French, and he doesn't like fortified. He doesn't like fortified Aussies. Similar Scottish distillers have said things where you can if you are using fortifieds, you're hiding bad spirits. So the fact you guys have gone, guns blazing with a bourbon cask sort of ethos speaks volumes. And then you have to get Serge to comment on your stuff. I think that talks volumes. But yeah, I've been a fan from day one on your ex-bourbon stuff. So well done on that. And yeah, keen to try the red gum. I haven't actually tried that one yet, but it's always I've tried the backwards one. So I think someone mentioned it in the comments there that they've done a pretty cool release with it as well. So but yeah, keen to try yours.
And thanks for your comment on Serge, because he didn't know what a red gum was. So I did notice that you said it was a eucalyptus tree. So thank you.
Yeah, we chat to him regularly, and I saw the comment. He's like, I have no idea what red gum is, but it tastes delicious. And I was like, it's a eucalyptus tree. He's like, they're pests in Europe apparently. The Spain's imported them, and they can't kill them now. In Portugal and Spain, they're killing. Yeah. So there's the opposite of the whole natives kind of thing has happened. Because they're fire resistant, and they come back, and because they have bushfires as well, and whatever the forest fires are called over there, and they cannot kill the eucalyptus trees that the first Europeans brought back to Europe.
Yeah, there's a similar problem in California where they're like an invasive species of tree that was brought over by some bloke who was just like, oh yeah, I like these trees, they look cool. Not realizing that fire is part of their life cycle, and California gets wildfires. So yeah, they're not super thrilled about dealing with
payback. We've got enough stuff over here that doesn't belong here. And
exactly.
Exactly. Well, I'll drum roll here for the poll results, and I think this is probably one of the closest. Well, the spread of votes is fantastic, and not something we see super often. It's very close. Everything tickled somebody in this room. If that's
nice.
Yeah, super cool. The full noise fast strength came out on top, followed closely by the port bomb. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. I do think we've got a room full of fast strength lovers and aficionados in this room. But it was fantastic to see, and it was fantastic for me to revisit some of these whiskies and kind of see particularly how the O'Grady's has progressed over time. It's just absolutely phenomenal. And I want to thank you guys so much for joining us, for sharing your evening with us and talking us through. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for picking us to come on.
100%. And I can guarantee you I will be at your door as soon as that visitor center opens, demanding a bottle of that port bomb. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. We don't have any bottles for sale on the website, but if you're after anything, send Ollie an email. And we will organize to try and get it. I think the special releases are not available, unfortunately, like we said with the port bomb, it's his distillery only, but the core range are available. So email Ollie at oliver@thewhiskylist.com.au and we'll can I spell in rapid time? Yes, I can.
Otherwise, I'll give Emma the bottles that are available and the prices, and when she sends out the link for the virtual tasting, you'll see that there, and just reply to us, and we'll sort your bottle out for you.
100%. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for popping in and joining us tonight. It's been a wonderful one. Lovely to have like a big group as well, and lots of whiskies to share. But thank you all so much. Have a wonderful evening, and we will see you at the next virtual. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, Oliver.
Thanks, Oliver. Yeah, thank you.